Hi. Well, we're fully live this week, which is pretty cool after the last couple of weeks where we haven't been. Um, Circumstances meant that they had to be pre-recorded, so I'm sure some people caught up with them online, obviously on YouTube. You can watch any of these videos at any time you like. Um, Before we get into tonight's guest, and it's a cracker, to be fair, really interesting. Interesting artist, interesting musician, music producer, DJ, you name it. We're going to get into this a bit with Rennie shortly, but just a little heads up with something that's coming up in a few weeks' time, which is Janet Cawthorne. And Janet has a very interesting way of creating her art, especially the facial stuff that she does, which is this is one of them. And the further away you get from it, the more the picture comes into form. But she's got some very interesting psychology behind faces, and we're going to be having a good chat to her about that in a couple of weeks' time. And the other thing to sort of tell you as well, next couple of weeks, I am actually away on holiday. So there won't be these live broadcasts at all. So hate to miss one, but I can't get them recorded in time before I go. So we will be back in a couple of weeks' time. So tonight's guest, as I've already alluded to the fact that he is not just an artist, and he's been an artist since 2010. Prior to that, record label, music producer, DJ across the world. This gives you a little flavor. This video gives you a little flavor, not just of his art, but also his music.
Listen.
So there you go. Hi, Ren. How
Hello.
you doing?
Good, thank you. I like that track. Who did that?
Well, Rennie, I said to you I wanted to use one of your tracks for the back into that video, and I've spent today when I've been driving around listening on Spotify to your albums, and that one absolutely jumped out of the speakers at me, so it had to be used. It's brilliant. So that really starts me off on how did you actually, first of all, before we get into the art side, how did you actually get so involved in music?
Well, I was in bands when I was younger, sax player, horn section, kind of funk bands and stuff like that. But it was when I came to London and eventually met someone in the sort of early rave days, a DJ called Ellis, which is Ellis, just in case you think it's a drug reference. And he introduced me really to early rave music, which the early rave stuff was based kind of on funk and dub rather than house music. So I kind of got into it via that just as this sort of wave of raves taking over the country and beyond. So it was maybe 1989 when I started doing it professionally, I suppose.
Mm. But you also, I mean, I seem to remember you telling me that you played Glastonbury as well.
Yeah, I mean things like Glastonbury followed. I actually ended up having a live band version of what I was doing. So did, as well as DJing at Glastonbury, did Glastonbury a few times. Weirdly, I think our first performance made it into the top 100 performances at Glastonbury in the Daily Telegraph of all places, which we were, if I remember rightly, we were one above Isaac Hayes, which made me feel
Blimey.
very cool.
Yeah, that made me feel cool.
Slightly ruined by being one below the Wurzels, which let's just say that made it all come crashing down to earth. Wurzels, brilliant. Sandwiched between the Isaac Hayes and the Wurzels.
The Wurzels. So but you had your record company, didn't you? You had your label.
Yeah.
And if you look on online, you are pretty much attributed to bringing breakbeat into this country, and what they refer to as being new school. You're Why that direct? How did you end up going into that direction? And you've already just said you sort of had sort of funk band. So how come you changed direction into a more, because I would have thought you'd have gone in more like the house direction rather than the direction you've gone in.
Yeah, I mean the breaks really became a thing when raves exploded, and it was mainly a British take on house music. So it was it was, instead of a house beat, which is like a disco beat, a four on the floor, breaks was this kind of more funky alternative made by real drummers that came to the fore when hip hop DJs started. They realized that the crowd loved the bit where everything broke down to the break, which was just the beat. So we all started sampling those beats, which had originally come from funk, and then making tunes like house music, but with a different kind of underpinning of rhythms, really.
Yeah. But then following that, you then headed off into, well, from conversations we've had in the past, world tours with for DJing, particularly Australia, and you've done a few tours of Australia. So, first of all, what was that like, that period of time, and also B, what made you stop and start becoming an artist?
Yeah, we were very lucky in our scene, which was not as big as house music, but it ended up where most cities around the world had at least one night that was playing it. And luckier still, the music's always been popular in places like southern Spain, Florida, and Australia. So going to Australia normally in January and February for say 3 or 4 weeks and playing round Oz in 30-degree heat was quite nice instead of the British winter. Really, the thing that changed was when everything went digital. When people could get their music digitally online, then we'd be selling 12-inch vinyl was the main way of selling the music. So when it went digital, no one needed to buy it anymore. So sales dropped off a cliff. And for me, I was a bit long in the tooth to just be doing the DJing thing. And actually, the DJing thing was, if you produce music, that's how you got it out there. So it was always secondary to making music for me.
Right. Yeah.
Around that time, my other love was art, and it kind of crossed over because we were doing our own photo shoots and covers and etc. So I started doing it semi-seriously, and I was very lucky in 2013 when I put something in the RA summer show and got it in a print, and it sold very well, and that kind of got me the confidence to carry on doing that. So really, since mainly since then, 10 years, I've been doing both. I started doing music again more seriously in COVID, did 3 albums. But I pretty much split my time between music and art, about 50-50.
So, does your music influence your art, or can it also be the other way around?
Yeah, because I was doing digital art, not that many people around me were doing that kind of thing. I was in an art studio of, say, 12 people, and none of them really, they were doing more traditional painting. And for me, getting my head around Photoshop is about layers, and making music is about layering tracks together. So it was a very similar idea. And I guess the best tracks that I ever did were fairly simple and made you feel a certain way. And for me, the art thing is, it's all about doing something that will communicate something to someone and evoke some sort of feeling out of it. So there's a lot of similarities, really.
Well, that music link is actually quite a good link to the first picture that I'd like to talk about, because I know the story behind this picture, and I'd like you to run through it as well, because I think it's really quite cool.
Yeah, that is based on a very famous Hockney picture called A Bigger Splash that I recreated, and the twist is it's got a Rolls Royce that's crashed into it, and that's actually Keith Moon's Rolls Royce. So if you're old enough, you'd remember Keith Moon as a crazy drummer, and if you're not, he was a proper rock and roll, crazy, drug taking, huge drinking madman. And it's a fictitious meeting between Keith Moon and David Hockney called Keith Moon Drops In. And twice, actually, once when I was showing it, a woman was looking at it, and I went to explain the story behind it, and she said, "Yes, I know. I had a crazy week with him in his hotel in the 70s, where she met him in a club and ended up spending a week with him." And hair-raising stories. And the second thing about that picture is someone bought 3 copies in America, and I emailed them and said, "Look, I'm just checking. Did you mean to buy 3 rather than 1?" And she said, "Yes, it's for me and my children." And she said, "I am Keith Moon's daughter." So
Wow,
that was a great kind of,
cool.
yeah, because a few times with that picture, I've had a couple of people saying that you could get into trouble with the Hockney side of it, which is not actually true, because it's not pretending to be that. And
No,
also,
that's right.
obviously, I'm using Keith Moon's Rolls Royce, but she loved it and
Yeah.
told me some amazing stories about him. And so, yeah, there's a good connection with
Yeah.
that picture.
Yeah. It is. It's interesting because this sort of also sets the scene for your actual style of work. We're gonna look at a few more in that line. So this next one, I was so taken with this that suggested it to my son and his wife before they got married. It was an engagement present we ended up buying for them from you, which is very nice. But I love this one as well. So this is the this is the rowing coach on holiday, or something like that,
That's
isn't it?
right.
It's called,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And it's just, this is what I've always found with you, is your sort of you've got a witty take on things that you put together, which this kind of comes of it. But again, did you see this, or did you think actually that would be a great idea? Well, how did this come about?
Do you know the weird thing about that picture is I had the idea for it about 4 o'clock on a Christmas morning, weirdly, just in
Wow.
a half asleep, half awake kind of thing. and I put it together. Those people think it's the Thames, and obviously it looks like the Thames, but the trees are from a tree line that I noticed full of rooks in Lewes Station, where my mum's from or lives.
Okay.
And I just like the idea of a rowing. Obviously, we lived near the Thames, so we saw a lot of those scenes of the rowers and then the guy following behind or in front shouting at them. So it literally came to me one Christmas morning, and I then put it together. That the one you're looking at there is a screen print, and
Okay.
I've done also a giclée version, and that
Yeah.
print has been my biggest seller. That's kind of that's really sold very, very regularly and steadily over the last few years. So that's been very good to me, that picture. And
And
actually, one of the things I like is if people see it. So, like at the weekend, I was doing a thing called Art Wave, and people laugh, which is nice. You know, they're
this
laughing because
is also, was this not shortlisted for Royal
yeah,
Academy? One, yeah.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so I'm that's a picture I'm particularly fond of because it's kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, it does for me too. Um, so the next one, which is again is interesting, in terms of a lot of your work is about about shape and pattern, in particular, and nothing it sort of shows that more than this one, which I said this to you earlier about this basically being a bum, which uh, it's a clever idea. And so did you take a photograph and then sit and put these lines on that, or did you just sketch it out? Well, how did you get to this
No,
pattern?
it was several patterns that I pulled it got together. So stripes that I made into hills by
Oh,
dragging
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Photoshop,
yeah,
and then kind of made it was originally more obviously a bum, and then I
yeah.
just softened it a bit so that you think it is and you're not sure, and people say, look, is it bum, is it a bit
Yeah.
this? And actually I found out from, because my brother and sister live in Spain, I thought I'd find a subtle, it's called Tierra del Fondo, which is Spanish slang for land of bum. So and weirdly, now where I'm living in East Sussex, there's a one of the biggest bits of the downs, one of the highest bits is called Mount Caban, and it looks very similar. So actually having that picture down here, some people think it's based on that. So yeah, well, you're right. I like patterns
Yeah.
that I like the sort of repeating patterns that slightly change, and that's a very musical thing as well, where
Mm.
you've got rhythm in dance music and hooks, but they keep developing, otherwise it gets boring. So um, that is again that's a painting, that one,
Yeah.
but the original was actually a giclée print. So sometimes I'll do a print and then I'll do a painting based on it, so it's completely the wrong way around.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's quite a cool idea, because
Well, yeah,
you're experimenting without actually having to, you get to the point where the picture is exactly what you're looking for, and then you can actually paint it, which is yeah, it's
yeah,
quite a
yeah,
cool way of doing it, I think. Along similar lines, this next one, but again, it's with a motorbike. Again, hills.
yeah,
This could be, as we've already discussed, this could be the opposite of a bum and be the upper body. But it's again, it's I know you as being a motorbike
mm.
man, so I'm assuming that that's kind of a little bit of a nod to yourself in this
Yeah.
image.
I think a lot of the stuff I've done that's not so much the humorous stuff, but is based on quite kind of barren landscapes, and I like the idea of
Mm,
escape. So the idea on motorbikes is you can go, if you've got the right bike, you can go places where most people can't get to. So that
mm,
is kind of the idea of getting the hell out and having some fun exploring stuff. And again, the stripy thing is there. I like the patterns. I like op art, and I like the idea of basically nearly all of my stuff. None of it is real. It's all imagined or
mm,
imaginary places.
yeah. Which is well, I think, anybody doing this kind of work is, you've got two choices, haven't you? If you do look at Hockney, he does paint real places, but
Mm,
in his own style. But
mm,
to be able to sort of create them the way that you do is equally on the similar lines, equally as good, in my opinion. Um, so next one is a little bit different. It's still patterns, but you've used quite a bit of color in this one from compared to the ones we've just looked at.
yeah, that's a jigsaw puzzle
Yeah, I can
of
see that.
Europe, and
Yeah,
I didn't realise that it's something I do a lot, but I didn't realise the term for it is negative space. So
yeah. Okay.
it's the on that picture, the thing that makes the most of the image are the things that I haven't painted over. So the trees and what's supposed to be the water is the jigsaw, and then I've painted over it and made a scene by leaving bits open, like the jigsaw.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Britain, it just chanced that there were two beef eaters, and I actually did that just after Brexit, and so it's
yeah,
called Rule Britannia, and you
yeah,
can take it either way.
yeah,
But that was I did quite a few of those. I had someone who lived down the road who would make a jigsaw and bring them up, and I haven't really because they're very different. I don't often show it, but I'm very pleased with it. Um, the only pain slightly is when I did the other art fair and I showed it. I reckon maybe 400 people photographed it, and
yeah,
quite a few of them, not quite a few, maybe 10 of them were artists saying, I'm going to so rip that off, as in the idea. So I haven't
yeah.
really seen anyone do it, but
No,
yeah,
it's,
I'm very,
I mean, it's pretty original, to be fair.
yeah. And
It's
I am
yeah,
guilty of slightly flitting around a bit because what I should really do is do 20 jigsaw paintings and then show it. And I tend to do a few and then think I'm not going to keep doing the same thing and then move on, which is partly because with music, I became well known for doing breakbeat, but you couldn't really move out of that genre because you were known for something. So I like the idea of, I can't remember which artist, he said that he didn't think that your studio is a factory. He said he thinks it should be a laboratory, and I agree with that. As in,
mm,
you need to try new things.
yeah. And as long as your style stays there, I think that is the important thing. As long
Yeah,
as people know,
yeah,
I mean, I can look at this and know this is you because of the trees and
mm,
the way that you build an image up. I can see straight away that that's
mm,
you,
and
and I
that's
think
good.
that's an important fact that your
Yeah,
style
yeah,
is still recognizable, even though you might be doing something a bit different.
yeah.
Um,
That's handy.
yeah, and also it's a similar thing with this next one. And I want to talk about this because I can remember you doing this, starting to do this kind of work
Mm,
as well, where you're introducing um, veneers into
mm.
your work. Uh, and I, again, this is something I've not seen anybody else do this. Um,
No,
and
I guess again it's negative space. So the whole of that picture is actually veneer, and
hmm,
because it's striped, it's actually based on a tree called Zebrano. And I
okay,
managed to hook up with the oldest veneer making company in the world who got a They've got an HQ in North London and also Bali, and they get exotic wood, but then they copy the patterns onto wood, onto veneer, so that they're not just cutting down more sort of exotic, maybe endangered trees. So they'll apply it to any surface, and then you paint over it and leave what you leave. So I've done quite a few of these, and I like doing them. I like the fact that I don't think I've seen anyone do it
No, no,
before, and
no.
also they work really well together in a group. And the company were very helpful. In fact, last time I got stuff, they gave me an invoice for nothing because they wanted a picture in exchange for it, and it's quite valuable stuff. So I was, they obviously liked it as well. So yeah, it's something that I'm going to continue exploring it.
Yeah, I mean you've done some. I think I can add this one actually. Let me just do that, because you've done some um, other ones along a similar lines, um, using veneers, but where you have used completely used veneers. I just need to find your flipping folder. Here we go. So I can add this one. And there's another couple as well that we'll talk about, because what I want to also know is, right, here we go. So this one is all about patterns, and particular using a particular, I don't know whether that's a veneer or
No,
it's something
so
else that you used.
again, like I mentioned earlier, that was actually a mistake where I was drawing something in Photoshop, and that's actually a film grain filter
Oh,
that I
okay.
managed to then start using to create stuff. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of brother of the one that I got into the Royal Academy. And you're right, it's very light veneers. So again, it's for me, it's like the digital world moving into the real world where they sort of fit. So I did a whole series of those that I'm very pleased with, because again, it was so when I started working at a studio and there was maybe 10 other artists, and from what I understand, and you'll get this as well because of what you're doing, but it takes a while, and then you get going on a little theme that you think is your own. Same as music, if you just copy everyone else, then you're not going to have a career. So I went down a little route and thought, right, this kind of grainy, stripy, the lines and everything, I kind of fit for me, and I like the idea of cabins. I like the idea of somewhere to escape. So there's a sort of
Mm,
common theme.
mm.
Um,
Well, yeah, there is. That's why I just pulled this one up. So
mm,
that's what I was going to ask you. You do have quite a few where you've got a little cabin in the woods
mm.
somewhere. Is that? Would you say that's your ideal escape?
Yeah, in a way, I like the idea of you doing a bit of a trek to a cabin, and maybe you've ideally got a lake by it or whatever. It's an
Yeah,
ideal.
yeah,
In fact, a lot of people in Scandinavia, they have those sort of cabins
yeah,
in the
yeah,
woods, a couple of hours from where they live. It's harder
yeah,
to do that in this country. In fact, where I'm
yeah.
living now is the closest I've been to that. So um, yeah, I think someone said they find that sort of they're quite very calming type images, and I guess it's having lived in London for 30 years, it was the opposite of somewhere that's full of people, full of traffic, full of noise, and full of buildings. So yeah, I wouldn't say no to a bit of that.
Well, so that's an interesting point you just raised there, because so you've lived in London for 30 years. You've
Mm,
moved down to Sussex. So
mm.
um, does that mean that your influences in your art change, or the ideas that you're coming up with change because based on where you're now living compared to where you were being in the middle of London?
I think it does. Yeah, I think the music I've been making is a bit more musical and a bit deeper now. And I think as far as the art goes, it basically where we are is sort of almost 360-degree views of the Downs, which are hills, which obviously, as you know, I like a bit of hills. And I can base stuff loosely on what's out the window, but without copying it. So one you showed earlier, it was like based on a field of rapeseed with Downs behind it, and that was like a surrealist view of what I can see out the window. So, but I don't think so because I'm not. It's not like I've moved to the country and then start doing cityscapes because I think it's just what I like is a bit of minimal action as far as when it goes to the landscape.
So interestingly, you've not just you've got a few bit of sculpture as well, haven't you? It's not just just going to bring up your website. So I'm on the sculpture page actually. So an interesting point which we've spoken about is that you've got the letter E in your name is in red, and I quite rightly suggested that was because most people spell it with an I, and if you're like me, people spell my name wrong, it gets on your nerves. I've been called all sorts, most of it not repeatable, but in truth, most people would spell it RIM, not REM. So I think that's pretty cool that you.
I did that because of that, but it's also I remember reading about red attracts people's eyes, red cells.
So that's correct.
There will be some of the more monochromatic stuff I've done. They might have little touches of red in it, and it's amazing how it just stands out and things like that.
I mean, it used to be. Well, look at Banksy with his red balloon. It's a similar thing, isn't it? It's
the sculptural stuff. I like finding things and making. So the one on the right is, I think, apparently, according to the person who flogged it to me in a boot fair, it was an Indian juggling type.
Yeah, can see that. Yeah.
And I just put a couple of little tits on it at the top, and then suddenly it's a person. So I've done a few of those that are really that childish. And I will find something, and then I'll put a nose on it, and then suddenly it's a person. So I like found objects that you can turn into something else. So that stuff is a load of 1930s patterns which were used in forges when they were made. Wood before they were made in metal, and so that's actually with a friend of mine, Victor Ridigolo, who's a proper sculptor. And we made various forms out of putting bits together and that kind of thing. I mean, to me, that looks like two people. So I do like a bit of that, and also almost any paintings I do are on wood. So I make my own panels, and I like the fact with wood you can scratch it. I like the fact with wood you can gets older and it doesn't. Often it looks better as it ages, whereas there's a lot of materials that's not true. So I'm fond of that, and I'm fond of it as a material.
You so when you were in London, I know you had a couple of studios over the years. You also had one at the bottom of your garden as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
So now you're down in Sussex. What have you got down there that you use as your studio?
Been very fortunate when we moved into. We're renting something for years, and when we moved in, it was actually Jasmine, my wife, said to them, "Have you got anything that will basically get me out of the house?" a studio, and there's a disused wharf office about a mile away next to a little river, and it's great, four rooms, sort of storage bit, workshop bit, and main room to work and show stuff. So it's yeah, absolutely awesome. You can work outside, and it's half an hour walk away, and really good light, no one to annoy. So it very, very fortunate with that one.
So, in terms of your, just jumping back now to your music, primarily, I guess you're mostly putting work on Bandcamp and Spotify, Apple, and all the sort of streaming services, rather than. I do know that you do also still release some stuff on vinyl, because you do limited edition ones of those, for example. But does that also mean that you're doing the covers? That's
Oh
part
yeah.
of your artwork as well, is that you're doing the covers. So do you
Um,
get other people asking you to do the same thing,
Not
or
really, because the way
no?
it's changed. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really done anything on vinyl for a long time, but I have been selling old label brand new bits that were never sold.
Yeah,
And at the moment I'm on Spotify and all the others, but I'm not a fan because of, as an artist, the you don't even get paid peanuts. It's if people realize how much the artist got, they would be shocked. Bandcamp to me is where you can sell the stuff, control it all. But I like doing covers. I like doing little videos to push the stuff. But covers now have almost got to be. It's completely different. They've got to work just looking on your phone as a, maybe an inch square. So you'll look at a lot of covers now, they don't have the artist name, they don't have the name of it, and it's just got to be an image that kind of sums up maybe what the release is. So
mm,
I like doing that. There's no kind of point in I mean, A, I quite like doing it, and I like linking it to my art, and B, there's not, if you take the Pilgrimage album that I did, one of my early albums, we had a designer, a photographer. We actually hired a donkey and we went to Battersea Park. It wasn't that sort of cover, Gary. It was just it was the pilgrimage thing. So yeah, so those days are well gone.
yeah,
I feel sorry for designers really, because designers probably used to really like doing record covers, but
yeah.
unless it's for like a big mainstream artist, or unless the artist can't do it themselves, there's not really a budget for it. So I'm very
No.
happy doing it. I like doing them.
Yeah, well, and it's another art form in itself,
Yeah, yeah.
which is also pretty cool. So I want to now kind of jump to something else completely different from what we're talking about, and that is your movie career,
Mm,
because um, again, I was a bit taken aback when he said, "Oh yeah, I'm actually in Johnny English," and
mm.
then listed quite a few. You've done quite a bit in Guy Ritchie films as well, I think,
Yeah.
haven't you? And that. So, do you find that you play a similar extra part every time, or do you does it doesn't matter, or do the people look at you and think, because quite frankly, how you're looking right at the minute with a
Mm,
dark bit behind you, you
mm.
look like you really wouldn't want to cross you in a East End street. So
Um,
do you end up
Funny
do you
enough,
end up
I was on EastEnders once. So
Oh, I know. Well, that you say that.
yeah,
So that was when I suddenly realised, crikey, Rennie, was that somebody came running out of Walford Tube
mm.
Station in EastEnders, and a big poster for you was on the
Oh,
wall
DJ.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, DJing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, what happened was a friend of mine did a film, like a very, very, very low budget film, and I did the music for it, and the actress in it, because I was helping him with the filming and stuff as well. She said, "Have you thought of going into acting?" And I was like, "Or she said like extra work where you can just pick up money quite easily. This was after, the record sales were terrible. And I said, yeah. She said, just because, you've got a certain look. And I said, what do you mean, like a thug? And she said, well, yeah. So, yeah, football hooligans, elite Swiss Guard and Jolly English, wizard's parent in Harry Potter, Stanley Tucci's stand-in in in Captain America, mainly thug, cop, security, that kind of stuff. And actually, although it's a weird, because actually everyone hates you on a movie set if you're an extra, because you are. Someone once described, they heard a director talking about extras, and he said, "We need more mess in the background," and he was actually talking about people.
Oh no.
Yeah, because all you do is sit around all day drinking coffee and complaining that you're hungry, and often avoiding getting in the shop because you get paid anyway. So, having said that, seeing movies being made close up is fascinating, and the best one of those for that was Napoleon. Ridley Scott, seeing him set up a film crew where they're shooting 5 scenes at once, or from one scene 5 times from different angles. So he would have crew dressed as extras in costume, and when they would say action, he's got like 5 camera crews going at once, which is a really smart way of working because you capture each take 5 times. So very interesting. And I got outed a few times where you have to give your name, and then people link it to being a DJ and making music and stuff. But long hours. I'd guess if you were maybe in your 20s and you had transport and it was a way of supporting doing your art or music, it's a good thing to do, frankly.
Well, yeah, and so that sort of touches on something else a bit. Is when you're thinking about music promotion and thinking about all the things that you did to promote your music, has that transferred over to your art world? In other words, being able to promote your work and get it seen in the right places and that kind of thing. Does that help, or would you say that the art world is just too different to music?
Good question. I'll tell you what, let me turn the light on and see what happens.
Yeah, go for it. Starting to look a little bit like your
it's just literally getting dark before our very eyes. One second. Talk amongst yourself.
Well, we'll do our best.
Okay, one sec.
You sure you got some power down in that part of the world?
I think so. So,
yep, that's got a bit of light on.
Right, that should be a bit better. Apologies about that.
Yeah, it is. That's right.
Got dark while we've been talking.
And sorry, just to say that picture that you spoke about is actually on the wall behind you, isn't it?
Let me move and see if it can show.
Yeah. Oh, let me do this. Yeah, you can see it on the wall behind you there. Yeah.
It's a bit dark.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I did have that in the video, but yeah. Anyway.
So when I've done shows before, I have done, and I quite like doing what people did to promote parties, music parties, is I like putting posters on lampposts and maybe doing flyers through people's letterboxes if it's a local type show. And that's very much what people would do to promote clubs. People would be handing out.
Yeah.
And that actually works quite well. As far as promoting your name, I mean, I'm sure you found it, but if you take Instagram, that seems to be going quite well, and you build up followers, and then Instagram kind of stops your followers seeing your posts.
Yeah,
unless you
unless you
pay
pay them.
them money. So
Yeah.
it's all gone a bit. I've spent years where people telling you what tags to use, etc., and then the latest thing is people saying, "Oh no, don't use tags." That
No, I know.
hurts. That Instagram now pushes what you've done to 100 of your followers, and depending on the response is whether they let more see it. And if you do tags, they split that up and push it to where some of the hashtags are. So I don't really understand it. So the whole pushing stuff, I know you've got to do it, but that to me, it seems like it's in a very strange place. I think we've spoken a bit before. It'd be great if someone kind of set up like an artogram or something where it's just for art.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think that's a.
someone's trying it, but it's a big thing.
Mm,
But Instagram is not what it was because they've got reels. They're responding to TikTok and stuff, and so it's not what it used to be, which is very visual. People posting
mm,
work and people
yeah,
seeing it and following them.
yeah,
It's all very different. So it's a big question how the hell you get your name known. I think you have to do what you do and what I do a bit, but not as much as I used to. But you have to do shows, and then you're as good as how good at marketing themselves they are,
mm.
how good they are at that. So it's a difficult one, really.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that's one of the reasons A, why I do this,
Mm.
and B, why also the exhibition, the main art exhibition I do is Flux, which is what this is part of. And you came along to the one, the recent one in Marylebone.
I thought it was great,
Um,
really good.
yeah,
It was like a
yeah,
proper happening.
yeah, and that's the intention that Lisa has behind it, to make it exactly that. And also, curating the artist the way she does. I think you probably will agree the fact that you can walk around and the actual exhibition flows as
Yeah,
you would expect it to, whereas other exhibitions don't necessarily do that, because
yeah,
they don't curate it as well. They're more interested in just taking money and putting people on the wall and
yeah,
letting
yeah.
people put their own
No,
work up and all that sort of stuff.
I thought it worked very well, and I thought the
Yeah,
work was well chosen.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was.
yeah.
It's good. So we should be seeing you apply then at some point
Mm.
with a bit of luck. I think there's a few ideas coming up for the Christmas ones that we got coming up as well. But also, what would you say? What's next for you then? You've just done this art wave
Mm.
for a couple of weekends, haven't you? Down there.
Yeah, yeah.
Did that go? Did that go okay?
It was good. The first weekend, to be honest, the weather was terrible, which wasn't good for getting people. The second weekend was a much better. And what next for me is um, I've got a show in, I think it's quite near Newbury. It's the Arlington Arts Centre.
Hmm.
I'm doing something there in February. I guess I'm going to try and find a few places where I can do some more shows,
Mm.
for 2 or 3 months. I've just sounds weird, but I've just started doing mobiles, which I really like because I think everyone's got ceiling space. So I've just started experimenting with that using aluminium and stuff. And so I'm going to go down that route for a bit, and I'm going to probably spend the winter doing much bigger paintings, which
So
um,
talking about the mobile thing, does that mean
mm,
that you kind of you sometimes get inspired by a particular material you might pick up and handle and think,
yeah, I
actually,
guess
I could use it. Yeah.
I used to make very odd clocks out of copper
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
wire
Remember.
and stuff. And
Yeah.
actually, I'd forgotten that with wire, it's quite, you can, obviously bend it into shape. And if it's thick
Mm,
enough, it will stay there. So
mm.
um, um, I'm going to experiment with that a bit, but it's also more the fact that having things hanging. And I like the idea of because I've been using resin and stuff like that. But I like the idea of having stuff that could work outside as well. So if it was metal, something like aluminium, that I think that could be outside for. It might get a bit of a patina on it, but I like the idea of something that could literally be outside amongst nature as well.
I got a little comment in the chat. So Paolo, I interviewed a few weeks ago, and he was at Flux. He was walking around in a very brightly coloured kimono, absolute completely hilarious guy. But he watches these. He's always got a comment, and we'll just bring up what he said here. What a fantastic interview! It started very well, and it was a pleasure to see such a talented person and his unique work. So it's reiterating what I've already said. A lot of what you do is unique. I have not seen other people doing stuff like you do, especially with the bit of sort of wit applied to some of your work as well, which is
that's
pretty
good
unique.
to know, and that's very kind of Paolo. If you give me his details, I'll send him a £5.
where would you what? And we have spoken about this over a coffees in the past, but what? Where would you say your influence actually comes from in terms of artists from the past?
From the past. Well, I think for me, the OG, the kind of the main guy is Picasso.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people like Warhol who I loved what he did, but not necessarily the factory idea, but people that push things. But Picasso had an amazing career and really varied as well, which I like. And he did 50,000 works of art.
Wow.
There's a museum devoted to him in Barcelona. There's his old studio in like a chateau in Paris. But what I liked about him is he could paint amazingly well, like old school, being realistic when he was 13. But the journey he went on, like cubism, surrealism, you name it, and doing political stuff. And I liked the fact that he could, with one little kind of one line, draw something that would be incredibly powerful. So he's been the influence to me over anyone else, where and also those guys, same as Matisse and a lot of those guys, and they were still doing stuff, almost till they dropped. There was a famous picture of Matisse lying on a bed and he couldn't stand up, and he had a huge long paintbrush and was painting, had his canvas on the ceiling. And those guys were just, no matter how famous or how well they'd done, they were still doing, unlike people in music particularly, they get to a certain age, they get certain success, and their creativity or what they've got to say drops through the floor. What are you going to sing about when you've made millions and etc.? Whereas with artists, they you and I both got to doing art and not in our 20s, etc., quite later on.
No, and I think what's quite funny. So I haven't actually mentioned this at all the way through the interview, but you are my cousin, and what's interesting? Well, it's because we got the same haircut, obviously. Same jeans, same jeans, same jeans.
Is a cousin. Yeah, that's it's.
I think it's interesting that obviously where there was a big break where we didn't see each other, didn't have anything to do with each other for quite a long time, and then when we do eventually come back together, we're both sort of headed into the art world, which is quite amazing, really. And from different directions, because both our styles are different. But what I believe is that it's imagination that is the thing is the driver, and that that if you've got that, which us looking at your work today clearly shows you have, I think that's the one thing you can't teach that to anybody. You've either
No,
got it or you haven't.
no,
And I, it's interesting that we are, although we're cousins, we are from um, uh, sort of different sides of the family, because it was my mother or your father that uh, were the brother and sister. So split that in half, and therefore your mother's side is a different family.
mm,
My father's side, different family. So you couldn't necessarily say that the imagination side of it's come down from any particular route, but it is
mm.
something that we've both got.
Well, I don't
Um,
know how it works for you, but I will tend to I will have an idea for something that either out of the blue or as a kind of development from something else. But I will have an idea of I will almost get a screenshot of the final piece that I'm trying to do. So then I'll be in a hurry to do it, and I might. To be honest, if I was doing a painting, I'd probably mock it up in Photoshop, maybe, because the one thing about if you're painting is you can't press undo and get rid of it. So I would
no,
plan it, but I would have an idea and then go away and make it. That's my best way of working. I don't go to the studio with a blank canvas and think, what am I going to do today? Um, I will have an idea of what I'm after and then try and do it. I don't know whether that
yeah,
works with you as well.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't work that way with me. It's with me. I Anything can inspire me. It could be a song I'm listening to, and
Mm,
suddenly that image comes straight to my head. I see everything I do. I see completely finished. I don't. The bit I love is thinking of that image, and then the
yeah,
next question is, how the hell am I going to do it?
yeah,
And I love the problem solving between the start and finish
yeah.
points.
I agree. Yeah,
And that's the bit, and also making sure that it actually looks as you intended.
yeah.
And I end up having to go all over the world to photograph some stuff that I might need for a
Well,
particular
someone's
picture.
got to do it, Gary.
I know someone has, but you've got to be, you've got to be unique. And I think I've said this already today, that I think
Mm,
what you're doing is unique, because I've not seen other people doing that, and I certainly know the stuff that I do is equally unique, because again, you just don't see other people doing
no,
the
no.
same sort of thing. And I think that's perhaps the way to sort of find your way into uh, people recognizing that this is your work, and
Yeah.
that's the thing, the key, which again I've already said. I think you can look at anything that you do um, with your art and know straight away that it's you, because of it's your style.
Mm.
And yeah, people might try and copy it, as you've said, photograph it. Yeah, I can do that, um, but it still won't look as you as and the way you create yours. They can
No,
try,
and I think it just
sure.
takes a while. And I was told that when I, when I was in a studio with other artists in the same building, and one of the guys there who spoke a lot of sense was saying, look, it will take 3 or 4 years maybe, where suddenly you're on a bit of a path, a journey. Sounds a bit weird, but suddenly you've got a bit of a vibe going that's your own thing. And
Hmm.
exactly the same with music. You start off and you're sounding like everyone else, and then you get something that marks you out with your own sound. um, and the same with visually. I could tell if there were 50 photographs, I could tell that if it was one of yours or not.
Hmm.
And you're right, it's very important. It's the same as, think of singers, think of your favorite singers, the ones who stand out. They're not always necessarily the best singers. You can tell it's them.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
right.
there's millions of amazing musicians and artists, and so hundreds and thousands of singers who sound incredible, but they haven't got their own sound. So they're destined to probably be, hopefully, well-paid session musicians or whatever. But you need something that you can, where you stand out, and you know it's, or you hope you know it's by them. So I think that's quite a key thing.
So one thing I haven't asked you is, do you have a lot of work on the go at the same time, or do you just work on one picture or one sculpture at any one time?
I have a few things on the go. I have
Yeah,
things that I find and buy, and then think, right, I'm going to do something with that, but I'm not sure. I'll have things where, so up on the downs, maybe a quarter of a mile up the hill, I saw someone had a barbecue or a fire, and there's a shape, some wood that looks like an elephant. So I then came down and got the washing line and dragged it down the hill, and it's been drying for a year and a half. So I'm going to
yeah.
work on that when it's dry.
Mm,
If I'm doing a painting, if I might do two or three that if they're in the same format and the same. Let's say if it was the veneered stuff, then it makes sense to prepare it and make up panels at the same time. Not, I don't have loads of things going on, maybe 4 or 5 different things. Say
mm,
one thing that's almost finished, there might be something bothering me about it, and then others from about to do it. And same with music, 4 or 5 tracks on the go. Maybe one's finished but needs another couple of listens, another one's nearly done, one's a rough demo, etc. So yeah, not loads and loads, but a
yeah.
amount.
So, and that you'll know this because of, we've spoken about this with music as well. Because obviously, I do a good bit of music myself, not anywhere near the same sort of quality and of stuff that you're doing, but
Are you saying
you
it's
also
better? No, I'm
you
kidding.
know full
I've heard
you
some of
know
it.
full well you know full well it's not.
I've heard
But
it's very good.
but putting on but stick a set of headphones on
Yeah,
and start mixing and mastering what you're doing, your ears become used to what you're actually listening to, and therefore some
yeah.
of the stuff gets completely lost.
Mm,
When I'm working on a picture, the same thing happens, and I'll find something in one of mine at the background shouldn't be there, but I
mm,
haven't spotted it because I'm just so focused
yeah,
on
yeah.
elements that I'm doing. And do you think that's also true? So one of the reasons I think for going between a few different pictures or whatever at once is because then when you then come back to it,
Oh yeah,
you can then go, oh God, what did I do that for? And which is your method of sort of putting it together, perhaps a roughly in Photoshop gives you the idea of you can play
yes,
about with that
yeah.
without, as you say, you can't press an undo button when you're doing a painting.
Well, I used to be a copywriter a long time ago, writing
Oh
ads,
yeah, that's right. I remember.
and they had a thing called the overnight test, which was you do something and you think it's great, and then you literally pin it on the wall and come in the next morning and see if it's still so brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
With art and with music, often there'll be something where you can just a bit of distance between it, not a day, a couple of weeks. You come back at it and go, oh yeah,
Hmm,
that's the thing over there that's bothering me, and it's not quite right. So a bit of distance is good, which is why you do need more than one thing you're working on.
hmm,
But
hmm. Well, we've gone a little bit over time, which I
oh,
knew we
no,
would, and that hour goes really quickly, unbelievably. Everybody our sort of interview says the same thing. So I'm going to do something I haven't done before, which is I'm going to play the video I did right at the beginning. There's a few people watching who've come on since. I haven't done that before, but it's totally self-indulgent because I just want to listen to that song again.
oh, good.
So thanks very much for coming on, Ren. I hope
Thanks for having me.
it's been worthwhile. Stay online because once I've signed off, we'll have a little quick chat
Sure,
before I go and sort out a
sure.
coffee. And again, thanks very much, and hopefully we will see you at Flux in the near future.
Awesome.
And thanks very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you, Gary.
Absolute pleasure.
See you, everyone.
So yeah, as I said, I'm going to play this video I did at the beginning, purely because Rennie's music as well, not just his art, but it's a great song. You can catch it on Spotify, Apple, all the other usual places. You can buy it on Bandcamp, It's a cracking song. We both used to go to a nightclub on Canvey Island, the Gold Mine, and some of Rennie has done a bit of stuff that is sort of a little semi homage to that place. But I will see you. I will see you in a couple of weeks' time. As I said, I'm not around next week or the week after because I'm away finally on a late summer holiday. But I will be back the week after. And as I've said earlier too, Janet Cawthorne will be coming on. I think she's the 17th of October, Janet. So that will be another really great, interesting interview. So see you all in a few weeks' time. Thanks for watching.
Listen.